What up, though? It's your main guy, tapping back in with y'all, and welcome to another episode of Life After Wife podcast. This podcast is in honor of my wife, Brandy Hightower, who passed away January 2023 with her battle from breast cancer. So, the premise of this podcast, we're talking about what life looks like after you lose somebody very important to you. For me, we're talking about my wife, so that's where we're at with this. Today's episode is going to be one of the stages of grief. There's 5 stages of grief we all know about. There's denial, bargaining, depression, acceptance, and then there's the big one, the one that can cause a little drama for you sometime if you don't know how to deal with it, and that's anger. Today, I want to kind of lay into the anger one. Because, yes, we all get to the point of acceptance at some point. But even with accepting this loss, you still kind of go backwards sometimes. You might go back to bargaining. You might go back to denial. You might be angry, right? Today we're going to talk about the angry one because that's kind of the biggest one I've dealt with outside of depression. So what are things that could anger you after losing a spouse? What are things that can anger you while you're grieving? One thing that I've had difficulties with is my boundaries being respected. Yes, we all lost somebody in this situation. Some lost a mom, some lost a sibling, some lost the niece, auntie, friend. But each stage has to be respected in some type of way. When you have a loss where it's super close, like a wife or a mother or even a sibling, you kind of have to respect those boundaries. Sometimes people don't understand and they think they might be doing some good, but they're actually making the shit worse because that person that's in that space of those boundaries, they don't want to deal with you right then and there. They might not want to talk. They might not want to, kumbaya or, as I like to say, sing old Negro spirituals at that point in time. It just might not be the proper time for that. And when those boundaries are crossed, then sometimes it creates anger. Sometimes you may be upset. Sometimes you may be like, dog, I done told you a few times I really don't want to deal with you right now. I don't want to deal with that right now. I don't want to come to the realization that this person is gone or the realization that I have to deal with you in this space of doing these things with you after this person is gone. And it angers you, especially if you're, say, depressed. Say if you don't have the energy that day and you just want to lay in the bed and somebody's asking you to do something and it's hey man, I really ain't got that for you today. As far as dealing with something in the space of losing that person. Another thing I'm going to say, if your family member is married, and I'm speaking of a family member that may be sick at this point in time. If your family member is married to someone and you don't know that spouse, you have no dealings with that spouse after that person, while that person's alive, just know it might move the same way once that person's gone. Because the person that's moving on with their life after they lost their spouse, they're only kind of navigating what they know, which is their norm, which is their comfort. But if you haven't been a part of that prior to that person passing away, you have to respect that boundary that person might not want to deal with you like that. Now, who's to say that it's going to be forever? No, it might not be a forever thing, but it might not be, I'm coming to these events with y'all and we're going to sit at these tables and break bread and do all these type of things if those things weren't done prior to that. You have to respect the fact that let this person open up to me if they want to. It might not be a road they want to go down. They might not want to deal with you. Respectfully. It's not a bad thing. It's not disrespectful. It's not saying, I don't want to deal with y'all forever, especially when there's kids involved. When there's kids involved, you kind of have to deal with things. You kind of have to go through them. But even in those moments, even with the children involved, there's points and times that you might not have that energy for that person. And respectfully, you have to kind of give them that space. You kind of have to let them find their way. Will they find their way back to you as an in-law? Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. But if they don't, you got to respect that. Especially if they had nothing prior to that. We had no relationships before that. We never broke bread. We never went to a restaurant. We never had dinner together. We never had stopped at Starbucks and grabbed a medicine ball. You know what I'm saying? If we never did any of these things in any of these things, then you have to respect that it might be a space that they don't even know how to navigate at that point in time, but they might not want to even try to navigate, especially early on. Now, boundaries are the key, and those boundaries need to be respected. You also have to deal with, if that person lost a spouse, it might be a lot of self-isolation going on in this. And when you, again, cross that boundary, while this person is self-isolating, you might get some anger out of that, especially if they don't know you that well, or especially if they haven't dealt with you in that space, or especially if they, are going through what they're going through with the person that they lost. They might not want to deal with you right now. And it's not a bad thing. It's not a shot at you. It's not a shot at saying, fuck you forever, or I don't care about you forever, or I don't want to deal with you forever, or any ever again. Just in that moment, I might not have nothing for you. And it's okay. Because at one point in time, it might be a moment that I might want to break bread, or the person might want to sit down and talk and want to do these things. But when they're in that space of just like, man, I ain't got it, you got to leave them people alone. You got to let them come back to you. And I think they'll come back to you faster if you kind of let them find their way back. And even in that, even with the self-isolation, is also going to be distance. Person is going to distance themselves. They're going to go to their comfort. If you're not a part of their comfort team, if you wasn't a part of the team that they always dealt with and was always comfortable with, then you can't expect for that to happen so fast, especially after the person that both of you adore. Both of you guys love this one person. And this might have been this person's every day. That might have been their, again, it's the wife or it's the husband or whoever it is. It might have been there every day. Every given breath has been with that person during that day. That person's no longer here. So now that person, now I'll speak for myself. Now I'm navigating this without my wife, somebody I've been with for 12 years. So therefore, it's times where I ain't got it and I don't want to have it. I want to just be left alone. Kind of want to do my norm. If it's taking Gabe to school or taking the dog out or just sitting on the porch, that's my norm. That's what I'm used to. That's what me and the wife did. These are things we did together. So if you're not a part of that norm, don't take it as a disrespectful thing or take it like a shot to you, like, oh, they don't care about you or these type of things. No, this person just lost somebody that was super important to them. They lost somebody and it's a different loss. When you're born into a family, you're my family. You're my cousin by blood. I was born into this. I don't have no choice but to deal with you as family. You're my cousin, or you're my auntie, or you're my mom, my sister. I was born into this. But when you marry somebody, it's a different thing. When you choose that person, you both look at each other and you say, I do. That means I chose you. I chose to live the rest of my life with you. These are things that it's not easy to deal with after that person's gone because we picked each other. We both stood up there and said, I do, to moving forward. Woman changes her name to that man's last name. That's huge. My wife explained something to me. We went to therapy 3 or 4 weeks after we got married. Unbeknownst to me, It's a totally different thing for a woman. Therapist asks us, what's changed since y'all got married? Shit, nothing to me. It's been the same. If y'all know my wife, she got big eyeballs. They get bigger when she gets upset. I turned to the right. All I seen was her eyes poking over her glasses. What you so mad about? It's totally different. Everything's different. What's the difference? And I'm saying that as an example that how big that space of marrying somebody is, choosing to be with that person is. It's a very big step. It's not just I'm born into this, you my niece, you my nephew, you my auntie, you my cousin, you my uncle. It's such a different thing. So when a person loses that person that they chose to live the rest of their life with, especially when you lose them at 44 or 43 years old, it's a totally different magnitude because your life is just, y'all just getting it together. You at the halfway point of life, or a little bit over halfway. But now that person loses that person. Now they have to go on without that person at a young age. And yeah, I'm mad about that. Yeah, I'm not excited about that. I'm not happy to sit down and talk to nobody about that. I don't want to talk to nobody about that. I don't want to break bread with people I never broke bread with for real. And again, it's no disrespect, but these relationships have to be watered. You can't just call me family because I'm married into your family. Yeah, I'm married into your family. It's cool. She married into mine too. But with that, calling somebody family, that has to be watered. It got to be nurtured. You got to put water on them. Plants don't grow if you don't water them. Same with people. You don't put the water on them, it's just a distance. I don't know you, and I'm going to keep it that way. And it's not a bad thing. It's just what I know. So with that being said, give that spouse some grace. Give them some grace. They'll come back. They may need you at one point. Not in a bad way, not in a needy, like used type way, but in a way like, I need you. Man, this is heavy for me. So those are things, that goes under the anger umbrella, trying to navigate without this person and trying to navigate new family members and people you don't know and don't have any relationships with. And you trying to navigate these things after I'll say the lead dog is gone. Well, hell, she ain't here. He ain't here. What I got to do with them for? What I got to deal with them for? I'm trying to fight this pain that I got going on. And it's very upsetting because in that space, you don't want to feel like a bad person. But when you're not agreeing with somebody else or not giving them what they want, you automatically feel like a bad person. And nobody wants to feel like a bad person when they're already grieving. And in that space of grief, where I've lost a spouse, I don't want to feel like a bad person. So that's going to create anger again. Because now you backing me into a corner to where now I got to come out swinging like, yo, what's this about? But nobody wants to do that. Nobody wins when the family feuds. That's what a great historian said. Y'all can Google and figure out who it is yourself. But, these are things you got to figure out. And it's just like, is it best to react? Is it best to say fuck it? Gloves is off. What you want to do? We can go down the line a list of things that I feel you may have failed at when this person was alive. You may say I failed at something when this person was alive. All these things could be looked at that way. But is that going to bring that person back? Is that the right space as a family moving forward? You want to say family? Is that a good space to move forward with? Do you want to operate in an anger space, or do you want to go disrespectful and react? Or do you want to control the rage? Do you want to control that rage you have inside of you that's fueling you sometimes? I'll give y'all a story. January 2022. Me and my wife have a very serious conversation. It was a conversation about me not being able to deal with her diagnosis. Sorry. And it was a struggle for me for a long time, for months. I couldn't figure it out. We were, newly married at that point. Hadn't even reached year 2 yet, right? We had been together, 10 years up until that point, maybe. Yeah, about 10, 11 years. Married for 2, closely. She gets diagnosed in August, and I was in shambles. I couldn't get it right. And if you know my wife, she's very positive, and I can, I'm worst case scenario. That was one of the things we wouldn't vibe on, because I can go. I always had to see the worst case scenario picture, and this particular time it was January, and we were at it, and I was struggling with it, and she told me, if you can't figure it out, if you can't figure out how to support me and help me through this. And at the time, I don't know if she knew the following January she wouldn't be here. But at the time when she said this statement, it changed everything for me. If you can't figure out how to deal with this and love me the way I need you to love me as my husband, and not being so upset and so beat up about it to where we just can't get along in this space, then I'll leave you. Now, if you're a real one, you don't want to hear that. And it was something that bothered me. And it took me a couple of days to process it. And I've been fueled by anger most of my life. That's just where I lay it. So, I'm fueled with that. But when you go through something like that and the person tells you something like that, you have to remove that and figure out how to deal with that person in the space they want you to deal with them in. Now, if you know my wife, she's going to give me all the fun facts she can give me. Fun facts of how many men left their wives while they were battling breast cancer, all sorts of things that I wasn't going to do, This was to death do us part. Sickness and health, richer or poor. Those are things that we, those are our vows we took, right? So how don't I honor that, right? A couple of days I took, came back to her, I said, I'm going to fix it. Give me one more shot. Give me one more chance to fix this. And I did. And I'll tell you, 2022 was probably the best year of our relationship, because we took all the BS out of the relationship, all the, the nitpicking or the nagging or all the stuff that, just all the bullshit was gone. It was totally gone. And it was just fueled by love. So now I'm giving you that example because now I'm in a space where I still operate in that space of love. I can't really hardly even get mad about too many things. But now it's more of a disappointment that still leads to the anger, because being disappointed is angry. I'm angry if I'm disappointed. But I'm not as angry as like I would have been. So you kind of just find your way, right? But it sucks. It sucks to really be in the space and trying to, not take everything so personally, and not getting upset to the point where, where you angry, where you fussing at, or maybe cussing somebody out, or feeling disrespected, and all those things. And the biggest thing is now I just kind of like just remove myself from those type of spaces. Like if I feel like I'm in a space where somebody has me angry, then I remove myself, kind of more so than getting angry. But when you're pressed and you backed into a corner and you're grieving, and anger is one of the stages, some of this shit is inevitable. You can't even get past it. Like, the anger is gonna come out. You feel disrespected. You know, you angry she not here no more. You ask the questions they tell you not to ask. I'm not gonna ask it right now in front of y'all because, they say you're not supposed to ask those questions. But you think about them and you upset. You're like, dang, why you take her? Why she have to go so early? Stage, you sitting around and you so mad or upset you can't hardly even eat your dinner because you thinking about, man, this was me and her favorite restaurant and I can't eat it with her no more. I'm pissed off. But one thing I do know that does help with the anger in that is you got to kind of block out the outside noise. And you got to kind of tell, again, you got to tell people it's no disrespect. I just got to figure this out. And if I keep getting pressed, then you're going to see a side of me that I don't want to deal with. I don't want to, I don't want to deal with that space with you right now while I'm in this depressive, angry space, So, again, this is the Life After Wife podcast. When we're talking about one of the 5 stages of grief, which is anger, it's tough. It's a tough space to be in. But I think one thing that helped me that's still helping me, is creating those boundaries to where I can't even take on your heavy right now. I can't take it on. It's rough enough for me. I got a 9-year-old upstairs, and I'm always looking at him to make sure he's okay. And, it's days where he comes to me and he's not okay. And I have to deal with that. And after that, I'm not okay. Has he showed me anger yet? Not really. Not angry, but he showed me some things, And again, these are things that they're not easy. They're not easy to deal with, so it's tough. But yeah, I think we're gonna wrap this one up. So before I wrap it up, I want to say I want this to be like interactive. I want people to reach out. I want to help people. Mostly, again, the fellas. I want to talk to y'all. I want to help y'all through this. You sitting over here in one of these chairs next to me and we chopping it up, that's going to help me too, because you might tell me something that I hadn't even thought about yet. You might give me something that hadn't even crossed my wave yet. And I want to talk to y'all. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you see that helps you out through these things. It's talking to people or hearing about how people deal with grief. So again, I want this to be interactive. I want to talk to some of the fellas. I want y'all to kind of DM. Again, it's Life After Wife podcast. I want y'all to like, share, subscribe. It's Life After Wife podcast on Instagram. It's Tapp Hightower on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, I believe. Tapped in on Instagram as well, but it's all under the Tapp Hightower scope. Again, like, share, and subscribe, but I'm going to close it out with this. It's not on the anger tip, but I was watching Regina King talk about losing her son. And this stuck out to me, and I want to leave this with y'all. Shout out to Regina King, because this ain't my quote, this is hers. Grief is love that has no place to go. Regina King. And on that note, we're going to tap out this episode. Again, grief is love that has no place to go. This is the Life After Wife podcast. It's your man, Tapp, tapping out.